Welcome back. Today we're doing Lesson 2 of the AQS Let's Quilt Beginners Quilt Series. During our last lesson, you saw lots of great prizes that someone out there is going to win. And so we're going to take just 30 seconds for you to hear from two of our sponsors.
Tracy's Tables has all of your custom sewing table needs. Visit tracystables.com to see the complete line of unique tables, carts, and shelves. And all of Tracy's tables are made in the USA.
I'm going to do a couple demos for you today. One on the AccuQuilt machine, and also how to do rotary cutting with a rotary cutter and a ruler. I'm going to do a demo now for you for the AccuQuilt Go Me style of their die cutting machine. You can see how easy that was to lift, and you know it all wraps up so that it's easy to take with you. Now we're going to need some 4-inch squares, and you will have cut some 4.5-inch strips, and so we need 4.5-inch squares. So I'm going to line up those edges, and I'm just going to roll this back until you need to make sure it's outside the gray part, the dark gray part. And so we can cut 4 squares out of this strip of fabric. And again, we're going to cut. This is a mat just like we use for our cutters. It's going to protect those blades as we put it through the machine. So we're just going to start it through the machine. Okay. Here's the proof of the pudding. Again, here's our scraps, and we have 4 of our 4.5-inch squares all set to go. Now, wasn't that easy? Very easy. Now, one of the things that you don't want to do is the blades are down right here at the edge where you see the different color in the mat. And so you don't want to take a whole piece and go like this and this unless you want it to cut all of those. So if you just want one, or I could have put my piece here and done these at the same time. Great little machine. And so we're going to close that up and just move it out of the way here for us. Okay, so now rotary cutting. One of the things that you always want to do is to align your fabric. Now, I always align my fabric on the folded edge. And so if you can see, I have 2 folded edges there so that I can cut 4 at a time. So I'm going to lay that on my rotary cutting mat. First thing we need to do is even this up. How many times have you come home from the fabric store and had an angle on the edge of your fabric? Well, you're going to see that I turn it around because I want to be able to cut right-handed. If you were left-handed, you would cut from the other side. Now, I want you to notice something that I've done to my ruler. We're going to be cutting 4.5-inch strips for everything except the lime green. That's only 2.5-inch strip. And so I've just taken layers of painter's tape, stacked them on top of one another, cut it. Not with my blade that I use for fabric, though. I would use an old blade for that. I would cut it, and I've marked it right here on both ends so that I can see the 4.5 inches. That's what you need to do to prep your ruler. And now we're all set to do some cutting. Now, one of the things, I told you that we have the fold. And so I always line up on the fold. All right, now, positioning your hands, you know, this is a really, really sharp blade. And so I always take my hand and put my little finger off the edge. That does 2 things. Number 1, it helps you secure the ruler, but it also get your fingers out of the way so you don't actually accidentally slip and cut your finger. The other habit you want to make sure that you do, when you lay this rotary cutter down, that you always put that blade cover over the end of it, because that's how accidents happen, when you leave that blade open. All right, so now I have my hand in position, my little finger off the edge of the ruler. You always want to double check. You know that old thing about measure twice and cut once? That's what we're going to do. And so I'm going to take the ruler and I'm going to move it in a steady motion. Now obviously I can't reach all the way to the other edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my hand and stop the ruler right where it was. And I'm just going to go and finish that cut. And now you can take that piece away. Okay, now I'm going to turn my fabric around, and this will make it a whole lot easier for you to line up on that fold. Okay, remember I told you to put the tape on here? So I know that this line right here is what has to line up. So I'm choosing the 1-inch line on this end and double checking it all the way through. And again, I'm going to open my blade, move your hand, stop the rotary cutter, and you have one done. Okay, let's open our fabric a little bit more and I'll cut a second slice for you just so that you can see exactly how I did it. Again, watching that line where your tape is, aligning it with the folded edge. And it's lined up there, and stop the cutter, move your hand. Once in a while you'll bump that a little bit. And that's all there is to cutting all the strips that you need for your quilt, except the line is 2.5-inch strips. So that'll be your task for the next time. And let's take a listen to 2 more of our sponsors.
Scissorman here, founder of Rotary Cutlery. Chances are, if you're watching this, you're a needle artist. And needle artists like yourself from around the world have trusted the Rotary brand as their preferred cutting instruments for the past 20 years. To learn more, go to famcut.com.
In your handout for today's lesson, you will find a complete list of all the colors of fabric and how many strips you have to, how many of the 4.5-inch strips that you need to cut of each of those fabrics. It breaks it out by block. And so I want you for our next lesson to cut everything that we'll need, because next week we get to do some sewing. And one final word from our sponsors, and I'll be right back.
A machine with endurance is important. That's why I own the Janome Continental M7. Janome, reliability by design.
Trust the quality of Coats & Clark threads for all your quilting needs. With over 200 years of commitment to quality, selection, and innovation, Coats & Clark is the thread company trusted for generations.
Thank you for joining us for Lesson 2 in the AQS Let's Quilt program. And don't forget now, go register at quiltweek.com/Let's Quilt, all run together, LETSQUILT. And you know what? You can't win if you don't enter. So be sure to register for those wonderful prizes, and I can't wait to see you next week.